So welcome everybody. This is a new experience for me. I really feel, you know, privileged to be invited by the GoDaddy small business community to share kind of what I guess is sort of like a kickoff to some degree. I know Jonathan was on yesterday, so it's hard to follow in that shadow. And I'll do my best to just kind of share my story really and kind of share for all of you that are joining the experience that I have had being a part of this community, the small business community with GoDaddy, and all of the panelists that are going to be presenting throughout the week is really a great group of individuals that have expertise, coaches, their own obstacles that they've overcome. So all that being said, giving the kudos where the kudos is due, I also want to thank Alicia, of course, for facilitating this, and I know she's going to be on presenting as well with all things marketing and artificial intelligence, which I'm intrigued about. So my name is John Romero. As it was mentioned, I have a small business, and it's Intrasys LLC. Really, the impetus behind the name was interpreter systems. That was really the kind of the inspiration. And so combining that into something more concise, it became Intersys. And language services is really the foundation of what my small business is about, but it's really grown and evolved into many other things. For example, we provide language interpretation, document translation, but have also added GED tutoring as well as teaching medical interpretation. But before I kind of get into the business aspect and this topic of diversity in business, I think it's only fair to share what I don't think even the community that I'm a part of, which I just mentioned, I've shared these details. So I'll share a few new things for everybody. I grew up in a monolingual family, and the town is actually referenced on the Monopoly board, spelled reading, pronounced Reading, Pennsylvania. And it's one of the railroads on the Monopoly board. I was born in this city, which at the time in our community, we were really the only minority where we lived. It was really a middle-class area, and we were the only Hispanic family in our neighborhood. There was, interestingly, across the street from us, a Portuguese family that really became good friends with my grandmother, who lived with us. So I was raised by a single mom, really from an early age, from 9 years old. She raised 5 kids, and of course, I got to give a lot of credit to my mother, who forced us all to speak Spanish at home, and that was the rule of the house. And then we, of course, learned to speak English at school. And I really have grown to appreciate that discipline, as well as her work ethic of really working the graveyard shift at the local chocolate factory and Luden's Cough Drops, which was later purchased by Hershey's chocolate. She would either come home smelling like menthol from the cough drops or like chocolate, and always, a grinder. I really appreciated that work ethic and the appreciation of family and, doing your best. So my mother really, I think, left a deep impression on me that has definitely helped me have some of those disciplines and work ethic. And it really has allowed me to use being bilingual and becoming today a polyglot, speaking a few other languages. So I speak Spanish fluently. I also speak Portuguese, but really the interest and the inspiration of how language really ties everything together. For obvious reasons, right? We have to communicate, and small businesses definitely rely on clear and accurate communication. So throughout my, childhood and adolescence, I could really appreciate how language and being able to communicate with the language of the heart for people was really a great way to build relationships, which sort of just naturally became something that I did. And I used those strengths to my favor. So I got into banking from an early age, working for the local bank, Meridian Bank, which got bought out by Core States, and that got bought out. You know how the banks would buy one after the other. But I got into banking really right out of high school in a co-op program which allowed me to go to school during the morning and then work in the afternoon. Wasn't my ambition. It wasn't what I wanted to do necessarily. I enjoyed the arts, actually. I enjoyed graphic arts, and that was kind of my passion, was wanting to be an artist and work in, that, beautiful field. But I knew that making a career out of that was going to be for lack of a better way of saying it, a very uphill climb and very difficult. So I stayed in banking, stayed in finance, had a affinity for numbers, and kind of really did well. And I moved on to work for an international bank, and language and communication was the foundation. Interestingly, when we talk about this topic of diversity in business, it's really fitting because of not just the group that we have speaking this week that are, again, a very diverse group, but it really comes down to the inspiration. And in my case, the inspiration was connecting with people and seeing the value that hard work and having a hard, strong work ethic would lead to results. I didn't have anybody in my family, interestingly, that had their own business or had the ambition of being an entrepreneur or being in business for themselves. I had to think about that, of where that came from. And it could have just been subliminal. It could have been just possibly in my DNA from my ancestors. Who knows? The truth of the matter is I had a, sort of interest from an early age of looking at things from a perspective of processes. And I remember getting offered to distribute a local flyer for one of the grocery stores on our end of our city block. And it's interesting because I was offered like $20 to distribute what is the equivalent of probably like an 8-hour work shift of going house to house and putting these flyers for the grocery store. And that lasted for about a week, because I realized when I did the math, it was like, even back then, again, I'm not that advanced in age, but it was about $1.50 an hour. And I was like, okay, this is not going to be sustainable physically for me. So I think I had that kind of mindset of seeing things from a different lens from an early age, and deciding that, having, you can call a work-life balance, really, and looking for something that provided me satisfaction, whether it was distributing flyers, whether it was working in a restaurant, serving customers, which I've done, and restaurant management, all of these things that are, again, related to hospitality or customer service, was always something that I truly enjoyed. But the topic at hand is diversity in business. And I've been asked, which I don't feel worthy to kind of really kick off this topic, because we have business owners throughout the week that are going to continue kind of this rhythm. But I really thought of, what encapsulates this thing, and why do I personally think that those underserved or minorities are the ideal candidates to start their own business. And it's quite simple. In our communities, for the underserved, specifically African American, Hispanic, Latino, women-owned businesses, you can maybe include veterans in that, there is one common denominator. And to me, it's the tolerance for pain. As a small business owner, and those of you that are joining us, whether you're watching us live or whether you're going to watch this later, and you are kind enough to hear me out, I think a lot of times in our communities, I know when I grew up, there wasn't any discussion of, what type of business do you want to, create for yourself? That wasn't in any of the circles that I was in when I was growing up. It wasn't part of the acumen of, like, business planning, or, maybe having a savings account was probably the most that I was given as far as direction, but nothing as far as the why behind it, and what can you do to have a portfolio or invest, and perhaps look at, helping your community by creating jobs. These were just discussions that were foreign and outside of the scope of the circles that I was in. And I know that I'm not the only one. But one thing, again, going back to that common denominator, is the fact that having a high tolerance for overcoming obstacles, being rejected, being denied, and being looked down upon, creates a certain as they say, mettle, a certain resistance and endurance and a tolerance for pain that I feel is one of the strongest qualities a successful entrepreneur can have. And I think at the core of my, I don't know if I want to call it success, because I feel like in a lot of ways I'm a work in progress still. But to the degree of what success is defined as, and money aside, going back to that work-life balance, I think that it's important to understand that not everything equates to the dollar or monetary. And that's almost like an oxymoron, right? Because people say, well, we're in business to make money, aren't we? We're in business to become wealthy. And to a degree, that has some truth to it. But in reality, it's not so much wealth defined by possessions or money, but wealth could be including knowledge, experience. It could include community. And to me, the GoDaddy small business community is an example of that. It really is a way for you to build your wealth in a different way, because money comes and goes. Opportunities don't always last. But community, but having ties to people that will support you, guide you in your toughest moments, that's invaluable. And I think that we have to understand the value of relationships, which is why I love what I do. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy being part of the GoDaddy small business community. And maybe that's why I was invited, and I humbly accepted this opportunity to discuss this topic of diversity in business, because it really is a very special thing. And I think that if you have endured pain, if you have, like myself, failed, and if you follow me, I don't always just talk about the successes. I also talk about the fact that I've failed a lot. And that is actually part of that medal, part of that quality of a good and successful entrepreneur, to understand that failure is a part of the process. It's not the end result. And that you're only as strong as the communities that you are part of and the relationships you build. And for me, that has been my secret sauce. That's been kind of my guide, is that I have individuals in my circle that have helped me, I've learned from, and have helped me to build my wealth of knowledge, my experience, my confidence to be able to be in groups like this, which I would never have imagined, to be speaking to a group like this that would actually give me the opportunity to be heard. But it's the community that you're part of that allows you to do that. So diversity in business, to me, is about sharing that experience with others and helping them build that same confidence that, while on paper, today, you may not have the ideal situation, with the right community, with the right network, with the right relationships and clear communication, you can be successful. You can actually build your own legacy, your own business. And that's what I have the pleasure of doing. As founder and operator owner of Intersys LLC, I have the privilege of providing jobs for individuals that are interpreters, that are translators, that are tutors, that are mentors to the youth and the communities that we serve. And that is very satisfying to me, because it allows me to pay it forward. The opportunities I've been given with the relationships that I've acquired throughout the years, to be able to empower the underserved, to be able to give them a voice that is clear, unbiased, and allows them to express themselves with total autonomy. And that's why I really appreciate the field, my niche, and language services, language justice, which includes cultural competency, and really identifying the gaps that exist still today in this area, and be able to educate the next generation of interpreters as an instructor and trainer, which I am as well. And so with the platform that we created, which is the J3 Collaboration Project, it really follows that same vision and mission. It's really a platform that has allowed us to build a community of like-minded individuals, thought leaders, that have allowed us to leverage the relationships and educate those that are interested in building their own business. And it really helps them to not feel alone and to have the confidence to say, okay, I may get rejected quite a few times, but in reality, I know that it's only maybe a speed bump to get to where I need to be. And so what we've been able to do is have forums. We've had events from Dallas. We have an upcoming event that we're planning on the East Coast in Delaware with a LinkedIn audio event. Stay tuned for that, to really invite these thought leaders, these entrepreneurs that look like us and sound like us and have had struggles and have endured the pain just like us, so that we can actually visualize ourselves executing what seems to be the impossible. Because in a lot of ways, I kind of jokingly and not jokingly say, I'm living the impossible. I shouldn't really be living the experience I have. On paper, there were many reasons for me to not do what I'm doing today, to be able to build a business. I always kind of joke around. I was basically a chubby kid from Reading, PA, asthmatic. I had asthma, and I had all of these things from a physical and circumstantial level to really just follow what seemed to be the norm, right? Of nothing wrong with a 9 to 5, but there really wasn't any other, openings or pathways that I could see at the time. But to be able to have the community that I'm a part of here, and to be able to travel overseas and learn a different language, a different culture, whether it be in Spain or Portugal, it's not lost on me that it's a very special thing. And so thank you for joining us during this week. I'm going to give you a little sample in a few moments with a friend of mine who's here to share just a few things that, again, represent, in my opinion, the value of what diversity should look like and how that really starts in a grassroots level. For example, we really have to understand that knowledge, no pun, it's said many times, right? Knowledge is power. But it really is, because a lot of times, in ignorance, we think that there are doors shut when they could be ajar. It's just a matter of someone showing us where it is, and that is actually not as closed as we think it to be. So when you hear the experience and my friend, who I'm going to invite in a few minutes here, I really want you to think about how you could do similar types of workshops, conversations. Join the small business community with GoDaddy if you haven't already, because these are the discussions we have. These are the things that we, discuss in an intimate group, very real, very open, and, unfiltered. Because I think sometimes with social media, and we all use it, it's definitely a great vehicle, a great tool, no question about that. Jonathan's a testament to the power of social media and his success. And that's great. But what I think resonates with individuals, and I say Jonathan Graziano, is that it's very personal, and you see the storytelling. It's not meant to be just show. And I think that's really why he's been as successful as he has. And the principle behind all that is that when we, communicate with individuals, when we share our story, it has to be the full story. And it can't just be the success. It just can't be the end result. And so when I teach, when I interact with individuals that are more successful than me, I really appreciate the fact when they can open up and say, yeah, I had so many doors closed, or I didn't really imagine myself being in this situation. It wasn't until I had this moment or this opportunity or this relationship or this partner that I really was able to take it to the next level. And when you hear that side of things, it helps you endure. It helps you really have a balanced view that there really is no overnight success. I recently had a post that I kind of put out there of, an overnight success decades in the making. That's really what I feel I'm still in the process of doing, because I don't really feel like, in many ways, I've quite reached what the full potential is for what I'm doing. So you can see in the chat the link for our group. please use it, please join. And I'm going to invite, who I know he's here with me. I've seen his name, Jeremiah, or Jeremias Nivad. And I'm going to have a little discussion with him and see how I can do this, maybe with Jeffrey, if you can help me. I don't know if I have to do anything to allow him to
For sure.
speak, but his last name is Nivar, first name Jeremias or Jeremiah. There he is. Okay, cool.
There he is.
So I'm just going to have a little conversation.
You?
I can hear you.
Yes.
¿Cómo estás?
Good, good. Muy bien, muy bien.
Muy bien, qué bueno. So Jeremias Nivad is, multi-talented. He not only is an attorney, he's also an accountant, and more importantly, he's a good friend of mine. And I've asked him to join us because as a business owner, an entrepreneur himself, he has a lot of the experience to really help some of those gaps that I was talking about. For example, when I was growing up, I mentioned this, I really didn't have this, guidance as far as something as simple as how do we, prepare for, our financial future. So I just put a few things here, Jeremias, and I know you have a lot of experiences. Maybe you can share one of them. First thing is, we have the words, right? And words matter, especially Jeremias is also an interpreter as well. And he has a lot of experience in language services besides what I already mentioned. But there's CPA, there's tax professionals, and they're not all created equal. So let's kind of start with that, because I know this is one of your areas of expertise as it comes to taxes and tax preparation. What's the difference between a CPA and tax professional, or are they the same? And what should really, in particular, our community, our Hispanic community, where this is kind of a topic that just doesn't come up, what can we share with them that could kind of help them as taking the right first steps as it pertains to tax prep and financial literacy?
Okay, I will not only mention CPAs or tax professionals, but I will add just a plain tax preparer. So you have a CPA, a certified public accountant, who actually has the education and has passed certain exams as an attorney in the financial field and has become a certified public accountant. You have a tax professional, someone who has really dedicated to the tax profession. Among the tax professionals, you have CAA, certified acceptance agents. You have EA, enrolled agent, who's kind of like a legal term for someone who handles resolution, a very high level term in the tax professional world. And then you have tax preparers. And I'll be honest, you have good tax preparers, or you can have a lot of bad tax preparers.
So then I'm kind of up and coming. I want to make my money count, right? And most people equate a good accountant or tax preparer with how much money they get back from the government. Is that a good formula to kind of measure someone's worthiness to be our tax professional? Is that wise in your opinion?
The guy who gets you a lot of money back, that necessarily doesn't mean that he's good. Recently, I was at another forum, and we were talking about the great tax preparers, great in a sarcastic way, that actually charge you $100 to $150, and don't worry about anything. I'll get your taxes done. You are going to get a whole lot of money. You have 2-3 kids. Your income credit is big, and you also may have some other credits. So energy credits and who knows what other credits I can put in there that pertain to you. And they really don't pertain to you. It's just a person who's fabricating a profile that eventually the IRS will catch up to. And it's not a good thing.
Absolutely. So then let's say you were able to go back in time. You were able to talk to your younger self, a young Jeremias. What would you tell him to kind of really set the foundation of, we call it financial, stability, we can just kind of go with that. What would you tell yourself if you had the opportunity? What are maybe 3 things that should be priority?
Okay, young Jeremiah,
Yes.
start early. Understanding taxes isn't just for adults. It's like learning a new language. The earlier you start, the easier it becomes. The more fluent you will be, and the better you'll be able to use that language or those languages. And then I'm an example. As you, I speak English, Spanish, but I also speak French and Italian. I understand your Portuguese, and I speak 2 dialects, and I understand them as well. Second thing I would tell a young one, keep records. Just like you wouldn't throw away your high school diploma, your college degree, keep track of important financial documents. They are the key to a smooth tax filing and financial life. The IRS also recommends that not only tax professionals, but at a personal level, we at least keep 7 years of our financial records. I tend to have, on a personal basis, many years. The other day, there was a situation with my wife, and the Social Security wanted to verify some years of income for my wife, and they asked for tax returns from 14 years ago, and we had them. So there was no problem.
That's
Third,
great. Yeah.
ask yourself, young Jeremiah, young Johnny, or young anyone, ask yourself the following question. Never hesitate to ask for help or clarification. It's like asking for direction. It's better to ask and get right to the end of where you want to get to than get lost. Many times you have young ones, old ones, or anyone actually walking into a tax preparation firm, a tax professional, an accountant, and here's the paperwork, they're done, goodbye. Or somebody who may be self-employed. I have a lot of young entrepreneurs who have their own business, and they're like, here are my bank statements. I'll be back in a week. Yeah, in a week they'll be done, and the taxes are done. Common mistake. How can someone looking at 12 months of bank statements not have one question about a transaction? At least in my firm, we at least will have about 200.
Great advice. Thank you. And last question, why is hiring a reputable tax professional really something that pays for itself?
Well, a reputable tax professional will focus on maximizing deductions. A good tax professional is like a treasure hunter for your finances, helping you find hidden deductions and credits that are legitimate and belong to you. Avoiding mistake. They will make sure that everything is done correctly. Think of them as your personal guide in a tax jungle, because really and truly the tax world is very complex. He'll keep you away from quicksand errors and from penalties, from lions and monsters and snakes and all these poisonous things in the tax world. And he will give you peace of mind. Just like a good mechanic ensures that your car is running smoothly, a good tax professional accountant, a good tax preparer will do his job to make sure that you're at peace, and there will be no magic behind it.
Great advice. Thank you. That's really valuable. And for those that are interested in connecting with Head MES, he is on LinkedIn, owner principal of eTax Financial LLC. And again, he wears a lot of hats, somebody who can definitely, as you can tell, give you a straight answer and help you make some decisions that can really build for the future. So thank you, Head MES, for joining us. I appreciate you. And thank you for the support.
You're welcome.
For those of you watching, I really encourage you, if you haven't already, if any of this resonates, feel free to reach out to me as well. I'm on LinkedIn, of course. I'm with the small business community with GoDaddy. We really enjoy having these discussions with individuals, whether it's Head MES, whether it's Adam Griggs, who'll be speaking later this week, And, you're going to understand that when we have questions, and everyone does, when we have doubts, and everyone does, when we have challenges, we really do need a strong community to help us make the right decisions, or kind of help us not feel alone, not give up, and really push through what a lot of times could really be discouraging, because anything like that you obtain from this discussion or having conversations with entrepreneurs, I guarantee you they have cycles. It's all cyclical. And we have great moments, and we have moments where we question whether or not, this is sustainable. But when you have individuals that have been able to push through and overcome, and they have resources and professionals that can kind of help you make the right decisions so that you could position yourself for success, there's no price on that. So I'm going to actually allow some time for questions, just because I know we have participants here. I really appreciate the ones that are on with us. Are there any questions that any of you have that are joining us here? Any challenges that you're facing right now that you're working on, that you're trying to overcome? Let's chat about it. Jonathan, hey, good to see you.
Hi, Johnny. It's so great to see you. Thank you so much for that amazing presentation today. I wrote so much down, and I have a bunch of questions that I've gathered. So I'm going to be sharing some questions with you. For those of you watching, if anything that we talk about right now springs up any other questions, please feel free to continue to ask them. But Johnny, I wanted to start off first of all by saying first I want to say I apologize for being a couple minutes late today. I couldn't get my computer charged, and it turns out I blew a fuse in my apartment. But what I love about it, one of the only upsides of renting is somebody else's problem. I wrote so much down, and I wanted to start off with a compliment. And first, I think you just have the most wonderful cadence. I know you work in communications and you have a lot of training in communications, but even when it's so clear, even when you're thinking on your feet, you have such a wonderful cadence, and your pacing. It's so easy to listen to you, and it's so easy. I was finding myself writing notes and being like, "Oh, this is so clear and easy to understand. He must be a successful professional." So I was very taken by everything you had to say today. So I wanted to start off the first question that I had, and you went into this a little bit, you addressed this a little bit, but why don't you unpack this a little bit more? Earlier in your presentation, you started off by talking about success. You said success is, and then right afterwards, you followed up with money aside. Mm-hmm. You started talking about all the reasons why success to you, yes, money, obviously the resource that we provide for ourselves using is an important thing to be in business for. But you went on and talking a lot about how success means a lot of other things to you. And I'm curious if you had any advice. A lot of these questions are advice forward. So I'm wondering if you had any advice for people who aren't able to see that just yet. How do you get to those optics? I feel like some people probably have inherently in them, right? Especially a lot of small business owners, right? I love this, so I want to make this my career. But even then, I know a lot of people who do something they love and then it becomes work, right? And they don't think of the things it provides them with. What advice would you give someone who needs that bird's eye view, who needs to take
No, I think, it's a great question. I think, what I've learned, and I've learned the hard way too, because I think, early on, that's kind of the education we get in school, right? Learn, make money, learn, make money. It's kind of what we kind of get instilled in us. So it's not a surprise that we kind of are ingrained with this mentality that, okay, money is happiness. In reality, it's very misleading, because first of all, how many university graduates do you know, like myself, that don't find a job in their field, that are paying student debt, right, and not even working in their discipline? So you can see where there's definitely not alignment, right? And then the other part, I think, is this misconception that having challenges is a bad thing. And I think, it's really a paradigm shift of not being reactive, but proactive. And this is something that I've learned with friends and mentors of mine, that again, it was painful, because for a while I was very reactive. It seemed like I always was putting out a fire, or there was always something that I had to get done. And it wasn't until I realized that a lot of it was self-inflicted, that a lot of it was my accepting things that I probably knew in the very beginning just wasn't going to end well, but I still did it. And I think we have to be honest with ourselves and know what. I had this conversation with a class that I was teaching this week. You should know what your happy place is. Like, meaning what is the circle that you have to be in to be content? And that can include, if you have a spouse or children or pets or whatever that is, like, what are the things that are your non-negotiables that you need to function clearly and be content, and then work from that place. Because if you're always working from that place, the end result is always going to be positive. But if you already step outside that circle, expecting the end result to be inside the circle, then that really is unrealistic and very likely to fail. And a lot of times we end up frustrated. So I think going back to the question of success and what is that definition, I've seen where many people who earn a fraction of what I earn may even be more happy than I am. And that to me is very revealing that, success is really very tied to happiness, very much tied. And the pandemic, I think, accelerated that realization for many people of like, wait a minute, what am I doing here? I can actually function without having to be tied to a desk. I don't have to be in a brick and mortar. But the reality is some have gone back to that, right? And again, not to judge or criticize, but it takes a certain awareness, self-awareness, to be like, am I willing to fight for what I need to be happy? And when you put the money aside and start in that circle, in that place of like contentment, then you end up working secularly on things that will only provide you contentment, if that makes sense. And so I think you have to really be self-aware, identify it, and realize that part of it is painful. Like I said, for me to change from reactive to proactive was so painful. Like I remember being like, what's wrong with me? Like, man, this is like, I don't like this, because there's habits that we have to break. There's enabling that we have to stop doing when we can't say yes to everything. That we have to realize that we have to turn down good opportunities that anyone else will be like, what are you talking about? This is fantastic. Maybe it's fantastic for you, not for me.
Yeah.
And being able to say that takes courage, and realizing that to get to that place, sometimes that transition, that I remember a quote that I like from Dr. Eric Thomas, motivational speaker, is that, don't cry to quit. You're already in pain. Get a reward from it. So it's very powerful. A lot of times we give up because it's painful. Yeah. Well, we've all endured so much. Why not endure more and get a reward at the end? You're already in pain. Don't cry to quit. Get a reward from it. So a lot of times the reward is right on the other side, but we get blinded by kind of having tunnel vision and being like, okay, I'm not really comfortable in this place. I'm just going to go back to what I'm comfortable with. That doesn't bring me happiness either. Yeah. So hopefully that makes sense.
It does. It does. It's amazing to hear from you, because I'm a visual thinker, so I'm seeing all of what you're saying in metaphors, and it's amazing to think about how so much of what you said is about how you have to, not only is part of the challenge recognizing, what your circle is, right? What is the thing that I need from my experience with myself, right? That's the other thing, is like, there's always that X factor of I'm going to change, I'm going to grow. And I'm not always going to be able to say this is the circle that I'm going to have forever in perpetuity. I'll need to change that eventually. But it's amazing to hear you talk about just having to really confront a fundamental change you had to make in yourself. You have to change your wiring, right? To sit there and go, no, I can't be reactive anymore. I can't. And even though that's my nature, right? That's what I feel I'm programmed to do. We all have, control over our actions, but like based on who you are compelled to do certain things, to think certain ways, react certain ways. I think it's such helpful advice to hear that, yes, it's hard, but like there is, as long as you keep at it, right? You do the work. I love that quote, because I think, how many entrepreneurs, how many small business owners were this close, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Really, really were this close. And it's, it's not that they quit because, they gave up or it was too hard. Who knows? There are probably tons of very good reasons you have to make these shifts in your life. but you really have to just commit to the bit, and you have to recognize what is it about myself that must change to accommodate all of these other things that I'm getting from pursuing this kind of life. And I really appreciate hearing it from you, from someone who has taught themselves so much. This goes into my next question, and even talking a little bit about how, when you were a kid, forgive me, I actually had one other thought I wanted to bring up on my previous question when you brought down lockdown and how lockdown sort of accelerated that process for a lot of people. It's one of the only silver linings I can think of, is that even if there are people, the whole, you don't have to be chained to a desk. It's amazing finding there are some people who it's not some people love going in to have that kind of community. Some people work better at 2 a.m. in the morning. Like, there was this big reckoning that happened around just, this is what I prefer, and leaning into that sort of, this is how I take care of myself. This alone is how this stops being work and starts being me coexisting with taking care of myself. Thought that was great. Yeah. Going back to what I was talking about a couple seconds ago, where you talked about how, when you were a kid, and how you didn't even think this was something in the realm of possibility for you. There's so much tempering that has to go into being a small business owner, and it's not just in finding the idea and committing to the time. It's having to take care of your business every single day, and to build, a spine and a core that is strong enough to handle all the hits. Where do you think you were tempered the most in your life? Because you've done so much that's hard. You moved to a country without fully grasping the language. I can think of a few more frightening things to do, like truly moving to it's a smart thing to do to learn a language, but that was a really hard thing. Sure. What are some instances that you can reflect on where you think those really tempered me? And if someone is sitting here going, you know what, I need to shock myself awake, what's something that they could do, something you would recommend that they try, that could kind of change their outlook on things?
Yeah, thank you. I think, for me, most definitely seeing my mother's resilience. I don't think I really fully appreciated it at the time. You're a kid, you kind of just, you're normal. But as an adult now, I look back and, single mom raising 5 kids, and, that's just, it's crazy to me. Like, I never felt, which I'm sure she had a heavy burden, no doubt, but I never felt necessarily like I was without. And I know we were not by any means well off. We were not in the poverty line, but we were, I would say lower middle class. I kind of put in that, that space. But seeing the work ethic and the, not giving up. And I think for me, one thing I took from that, what helped me kind of with certain wiring, if you will, is that I really didn't see not reaching my goals. It's hard to describe. I always knew there was always a way, because I always saw her do something to get to what we needed, whether it was school supplies or clothes or you doing layaway. We did a lot of layaway back in the day. I remember going to Kmart and layaway Kmart. My mom would go and make the payments on stuff. But it's that there's always a solution. There's always something you can do. We can't maybe have it today, but we can have it maybe next month. We can have it in 2 months. And this is how we're going to, we have a plan and we can kind of execute it. And I think that, subliminally and definitely, resonated with me. And as an adult, it helped me, because as a small business owner, you have to realize that you have to be patient. Yeah. And I think that's the hardest part, right? Because you see individuals and they say, oh, Jonathan has 4 million followers, how am I going to, it's like, but I understand that, in reality, that's the result of what I can only imagine was a lot of just consistency and other things, because you and I have talked about that, and I know what goes into that. The reality is there's a story in there that everyone kind of hits fast forward on. Yeah. And the fast forward part is where the good stuff is it's really realizing sometimes you don't feel like doing what you're doing. There's certain days where like you're just treading water, and that's okay. Sometimes it's okay to tread water, because you can't swim all the time, and sometimes you need a little break. Sometimes you just gotta, stay on the level. And when you realize that, I think a lot of us that have had those experiences, like you said, that are either joining us or watching this later, they're like, yeah, I can relate to that. Sometimes I feel like I'm just treading water. I'm not going anywhere. And sometimes that's better than the alternative, which is sinking into what could be a very dark place. And so sometimes treading water is okay. I've always said that. And I think going back to my childhood, again, we did not have by any means you know, picture perfect family life, but it was something that helped me appreciate that you can always find a way if you have the right, you know, kind of vision of what can be.
Yeah. That's so, I mean, it's so inspiring to hear, right? And even thinking of kind of going back to the topic of this and thinking about diversity in business, right? And thinking about what people bring to the table based on their experiences and based on who they are and based on their socioeconomic experiences, based on their racial background, based on, you know, whatever it might be. It's so interesting to think about how we can, you know, we can see examples in so many around us, whether they're our mother, right? They're related to us, or they're a student, or they're just someone that we know. I just so appreciate your outlook and the way that you speak to these topics. Now, I'm curious about sort of, again, like celebrating diversity and really championing it. Now, I know you're very well traveled, you're a very worldly person. But how do you go about, if you're a business where you're not necessarily looking to build like a whole content calendar around it, but how could you be a business where you either want to, how do you go about implementing very thoughtful strategies on building a diverse business, whether it's an ad campaign, whether it's an internal hiring practices, whether it's just being thoughtful around holidays? What are ways that you as a small business or someone can think about celebrating cultures and being really authentic in the space?
Great question. I think what I've learned as a business owner, honestly, is that it only takes one person, one opportunity, one client to make a difference. And I think a common misconception is, I need big businesses to accept me and I'm gonna, you know, just blow up my business that way. And that happens sometimes. And I have corporate clients, and that's great. But I don't credit those clients for my success, really. I credit the mother or the father, the families that when I really was unknown in my space as just a single interpreter on my own, trying to learn this, niche and space, they were the ones that hired me. They were the ones that paid me, whether it was, $50 or $90, because I have seen where just one person can connect you with those larger opportunities. And I think grassroots is just that. I think a lot of times it's really an untapped resource where we think, I'm not going to waste my time because, these are, very small dollars and, they're not really that well connected. You don't know that.
Yeah.
I've met some really well-connected people that you would not imagine they're connected at all with anybody. And I treat them just the same. I don't judge anybody. And I think the biggest advice would be non-judgmental. I still serve the community the same way. I still work directly with families, non-corporate clients. And I'm very proud of that because a lot of companies don't do that. You have to, because it's not easy. It's not convenient. It's like, why am I going to do just one bill, like a one-off? That's kind of like, it's not worth my time. But it's because of those individuals that have really defended me, that, share my name, that talk to other organizations, that I've been introduced to some very influential people from those individuals. So I think what I would encourage everybody to do, it's not very hard, is find out in your local communities, nonprofits. I work with a lot of them. What are the needs of your community? What is the demographic? What are the populations that are being underserved?
Yeah.
And have the motive to help them for the right reason, right? Will there be monetary gain or remuneration, right? The fancy word for making money? Yes, absolutely. But that is never my first initiative, because again, it goes back to that definition of success, finding that balance. And I think for me, success is being able to satisfy a true need in the community with individuals just like me. Like I think of my family when I grew up, being limited resources and being able to satisfy that and I know the rest really has taken care of itself.
Yeah.
And it takes patience. It takes, really a strong core of beliefs and values to see that through, because it does not happen right away. But when it does, it's, without question, so rewarding.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear you talk about, because you brought up my success on social, and I can't help but think there's such parallels between the idea of, it's not about, you can't lead with, the goal is not to make money. The goal is not to have 4 million followers. The goal is to provide value. The goal is, I want to put something out that's going to help someone, and I do want to do right by myself by doing really good work, and trusting that, going back to success and wealth, that's going to be my wealth. That is going to be the wealth, is knowing, hey, I have this network of, I know these clients. None of my competition are going to touch these clients because they're not worth anyone's time. Meanwhile, you see the value in it. You see the value in it, and you see what doors that open. And I think what's really special about that is, that's because you are more open-minded. It's because you're willing to work with people who do not fit a particular criteria that other people may think is necessary for, taking on as a client. And I think, again, like, that just speaks such volumes about you and where you've gotten to where you are and why. And you touched on this a little bit, a bit in your last talk, in your answering my last question. But I just wanted to ask, I had one final question for you, and it's, obviously, diversity is such a loaded word, and it can be such a potent word, and it can be used so cheaply, and it can be so performative. I'm wondering if you would be able to speak a little bit to, what in your work, what have you recognized as real disconnects between just people of, again, different socioeconomic classes, different cultural classes, language barriers? What are some of the key real disconnects people have with those very literal, things aside? If people can't communicate, they can't communicate on a surface level. Right. But what are some really, really core disconnects that you recognize that maybe people could take away from this conversation and try and be a little better at moving forward?
Absolutely. Great question. I think in our niche, language services, very common misconception that interpreters are translators and translators are interpreters, right? And it seems like semantics, but interpreters are spoken language, professionals, and translators are the written word. And they're definitely different disciplines. And why is that significant? Because a lot of times bilingual staff are given burdens that they're really not trained or prepared for. It's kind of like saying, oh, you're bilingual, so you should automatically be able to interpret or translate this for me because, you speak that language. That is like saying, a tailor is really good at sewing a suit, so you can do my open heart surgery because you're good at stitching. That's, mind blowing. We would never do that. But that's kind of the disconnect of, like, understanding this is a discipline. It is something that it requires professional training, understanding cultural competency, understanding that even, for example, Spanish, which is obviously very common and one of the most common non-English languages, there are, regionality and cultural differences and nuance. Spain, Castellano, versus the Spanish spoken, say, in the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, has words that just don't mean the same thing, whether it's Mexico or Colombia. And then you have, South America, and being able to identify and understand that, yes, it's the same language. It's kind of like Portuguese from Brazil versus Portuguese from Portugal.
That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah.
My old roommate is from Portugal.
You can communicate, you can understand each other, but there are some disconnects there where, if it's possible, ideally you want someone who is familiar with the culture, because it really makes a better connection. And it's having that wherewithal to understand that there is a difference. Not that we have to be experts. I don't pretend to be. There's so many things I've continued to learn, which I love what I do for that reason. Because, like, oh, where's that language from? And whether it's, let's say Nepali, are they from Nepal, or are they Bhutani refugees? Like, And probably people are like, what does that mean? Well, it means something because there's a difference. And so when you learn about, all of these communities and their story and the struggles that they have, it really helps you appreciate that they deserve the same representation, to have someone who can speak the way they speak, not requiring them to change the way they speak to fit what other
Yeah.
people think is the way you should be speaking Spanish or Nepali or any language. Like, no, you don't speak it the right way. We speak it better because we're from here. That is really, I think, a good representation of what diversity is recognizing that everyone has their unique culture that needs to be respected.
Yeah.
And being able to appreciate that, whether it's language access, whether it's building a business, whether it's marketing for your business as a minority business owner, which again is one of our missions. I think it's understanding those nuances at a grassroots level that allows you to do what you've done on social media, which is reach people and have people get touched by your message, not because it's fabricated, not because it looks or sounds good, but because it resonates, because it's real. And they can see like, yeah, that's who I am.
You're so kind. It's amazing what happens when you sort of give everyone the dignity that they deserve, right? Whether it's their culture as an individual. It's amazing how far that goes. And you know that better than most because of all of the amazing work that you do. Now, Johnny, we're about to wrap up. Got about 2 minutes left, but I wanted to, first of all, I just want to say thank you again so much for being a part of our Small Business Week series. You're such a valued member of our community, and I love anytime I get to hear you talk. You have come so far since we first met and have learned a few new languages, I believe, which I think I'm gonna hit you up on lessons one day soon.
No problem.
I wanted to just ask before we sign off, can you tell us about any upcoming projects you're working on that you're super excited about?
Yeah.
And if people wanted to follow you or follow up with you, where could they go about doing that?
Yeah, so upcoming events. There's going to be a LinkedIn audio event for the J3 Collab project. You can find us on LinkedIn. We have a company page on there. Again, that's our marketing platform for minority business ownership. I think it's slated for August 15th. We're going to announce it soon. Again, it's LinkedIn audio, which will, you don't have to have your camera on, nothing like that. It'll be a lot of fun. So we'll be announcing that. Mid August, I'll be having my 7-year anniversary with Intersys LLC, and we're doing this year theme of hashtag more than bilingual. And we're going to have probably a hybrid event where it's going to be online in part and at an undisclosed location yet, just because I haven't worked it out yet, possibly Europe, we'll see, where we're going to have
It's so VIP, you guys. It's just you don't have the password. That's it. You just don't have the password yet.
But stay tuned for that. Follow us on LinkedIn as well. We're on social, Instagram. We have a YouTube channel, Tuned In with Intersys, where I have conversations with individuals like Adam Griggs. We have a recording that we've done in the past, but that's how you can reach me. Please reach out. Love to connect. And thank you again for the opportunity to speak my piece and giving me an opportunity to be heard. So it's always a lot of fun. Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate it.
Oh, you are just the best, Johnny. We are, I speak for myself and the whole team here at GoDaddy and the community. I speak on behalf of literally everyone. You are fantastic. And we're so grateful that you took the time out of your day to share your wisdom with us. Again, you are such a valued member of this community. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning. We hope to see you later today for our second video of the day, our second series of the day with Alicia. It's at 3 p.m. Eastern. Again, thank you all so much. It's been a really fun time. And yeah, follow Johnny, keep up with what he's up to. And I hope you all have a wonderful day today.